Today, we are gathered here to finally put a concept to rest. Not really a concept, but a way of life. Not really a way of life, but a lifestyle. Okay, I'll stop before we get into a loop that will be impossible to stop. Now, if you have been catching up to the videos of late, then you know there has been a game plaguing me. Something that I talked about a lot on this channel, but never completed it. The main reason I never completed it, because I couldn't really get it to run without there being some sort of problem. Now you should probably get what game we're talking about, but let's brush up on the details. So the main issues I had with running Veilguard was a load error problem. The game would load in at times. You would have to go back to the main menu and select another save. Now that wouldn't be a problem if you load back into the menu quickly, but sadly that wasn't the case. It takes a few minutes to get back to the menu after seeing that error message. Now how do you fix this? The best way to fix it is to either keep trying till it loads back in, or to try a different save file. Now, as great as that sounds, it isn't really all that viable when it takes so long to get back to the startup screen. I mostly give up if a game just doesn't want to run, mainly because it feels like it doesn't want to get played. I also felt that way, which is why I stopped playing it. That was until I realized that I wanted to finish the game, because I finished all the other games in the series. So I loaded it up again, and it actually ran better than before. It didn't really have any load errors. That was until I had the dumb idea to download mods for the game, and then it went back to its previous state. I quit it again for stream, but decided that I would actually finish the game, but off stream. The main problem was that the load error never really went away. But then I remembered that the Steam Deck was a thing. A while back, I tried it out on my Steam Deck. And besides looking really retro, didn't have the problems the PC version gave me. That meant that all the load files I couldn't load on my PC was able to be opened and played. So I decided to play the game on my Steam Deck instead of my PC, which wasn't an amazing experience. Sitting at your desk and not being able to play on the PC you built for gaming isn't amazing. I just sat at my desk and gave myself a week to beat the game, and even took time off from making content. I still streamed the game, but didn't make a script or record a video, and thankfully was able to beat the game a day ahead of schedule. Also, the video will feature light spoilers. We'll be showcasing videos from the game from when I played it on stream. I won't really go into big details, so nothing big will be spoiled. That way, if you plan to play the game or are playing the game, then you can continue without feeling like I ruined everything. Also, forgot to mention my other problems when it came to load errors. It's the worst thing, because yes, it gets worse. The worst thing that happened is that load errors could happen if I try to load into an area. That means that you get kicked out the game because you couldn't load an area in. I hated that happening because I could only save in the lighthouse at that point. The main reason for that is because lighthouse save files have the highest chance of being loaded. So if I was unlucky, then I might have lost hours of progress, which is why I quit the game the first time. So it's going to be a weirdly structured video, because I would usually talk about story or gameplay first, but not going to do that. I've talked about this game a few times, and kind of want to talk about different things that I experienced because I beat it. The Dragon Age games haven't been shy with showing cheek when it comes to romances. I say that because I played all the games, have experienced what each game brings to the table. I started with Inquisition, which is a weird way to start the series. I know. I was in college when the game came out, and it seemed like my type of game. And before the mention of Inquisition, I had never heard of Dragon Age. Because it was my first entry of the series, I was able to experience many playthroughs and storylines. Besides 3 characters, I remembered every character in the game. And even though Dragon Age never went far enough to show you the act, they still showed stuff. The stuff being breast or ass, but from my recollection, they never showed genitals. Now, if you download certain mods, you will see a ton more. Most games don't go as far as The Witcher or Baldur's Gate 3. Now, romance in Veilguard felt weird, even up to a point you locked in your choice. The main reason is because you would get messages closer to the solidification point. Those messages would basically tell you that you're just flirting, but aren't really vying for a relationship at this point. Have you played most games for romances? You know a ton of them can feel rushed, because you only have so much time till the end of the days. When it comes to Inquisition, you had so many moments of bonding with your choice, before getting that final romance scene. It made you feel things, well at least it did for me, when everything wrapped up. Sarah, the most chaotic and somewhat disliked character, had so many layers. And once you uncovered it all, you saw this beautiful but hurt soul. I love that chaotic murder gremlin. Even though, as a partner, I would never really seek her out. But then again, I don't really seek a partner at all. Now I say all this. But truthfully, my favorite romance partner in that game was Dorian. Because, hot damn, did you see that, man? Anyway, in Veilguard, I had 2 people I was playing as my first romance. I said first because I was planning to play this game about 3 times. That was the original plan, but sadly I only played this game once, which will be explained in the next plot point. So my first one was going to be Harding, because I flirted with Harding a ton in Inquisition, so it felt fitting to actually make it a thing in this new Dragon Age. To give better context, Harding was a scout we saw a ton out in the field, which we could flirt with, but led to nothing. Then I met a really thick elf, which was something I never expected in a Dragon Age game. Listen, elves in this game were the thinnest things possible. It wasn't even possible to be an elf with a bit of fat. This game kind of threw it out the window. It allowed you to be any type of body type for any of the races. A skinny dwarf is literally just a fucking halfling at this point. Actually, yeah, a skinny dwarf is a halfling. Oh my gosh. Now, I wouldn't lie. When I say I was a bit disappointed that I didn't even get to see this thick elf out of her clothes, even a little bit once I finished the romance. Now, there could be different parameters I miss. It could be selecting certain dialogue options, or doing certain actions in game, but all I saw was her collarbone. This could have been Veilguard's Josephine, where the ending was lackluster. Again, I have no idea if the other romances are better, because I only played this game once. Also, there was really only one romance cutscene, and that didn't occur till the end of the game, which is really bad. The main reason that is bad is because it takes too long to see that relationship blossom. Like I said earlier, you just innocently flirt for a long time, and you only become a thing at the end. So a lot of you can benefit from the relationship until it's too late. Also, you basically kiss and do the deed in the same cutscene, so there really isn't much build up. Besides my disappointment about the lack of skin, I was amazed at what the game decided to implement. So for the other games, if you didn't romance the other characters, then they would be presumed to go maidenless for the most part, unless you set some stuff up for them. Maidenless meaning they didn't end up with anyone in the end. Sounding like me at this point. So the game decided to pair off the characters with other party members, which is a really nice touch. Then again, there's a part of me that doesn't like this because it makes me hesitant if I plan to play the game again. I feel bad about taking someone's determined partner away from them, because I wanted to see how the romantic story would play out with my character. So even though I felt the romance was sweet, it felt kind of empty because I felt that more should have been added. It just felt like things were missing to make me happy with my choice. I think in total I got like 2 cutscenes when I went to Fish Roy Balar. Again, I don't know if I picked the most boring one, since I didn't experience everything else. Loss. Something I never thought I would actually fully experience in a Dragon Age game. You would lose people, but it wouldn't be for a while. If you did lose them, it wouldn't really be because of death. Also, everything would be preventable depending on your choices, but this game didn't include that. So, this game kind of follows Mass Effect 2 when it comes to the ending. You have this big mission where you have to delegate roles. If you choose wrong, the person doing it can die. Like I said earlier, you can easily prevent that death by choosing the right person. For some reason, the game decides against that. Someone has to die. It's up to you to decide which death will hurt less. I don't really like these type of situations, because it prevents a good ending from ever occurring. Now, if you mess up, choose the wrong person, and die later on down the line. Then you know later on. Don't make it so death is going to happen regardless, even if you do everything right. I didn't feel sad because of the loss because I interacted with the character a ton. Hurt more once it actually came to be. Now, if that is why they decided to create a death, it's a really shitty way to make me feel emotions. Fuck, like, what was going through their minds to make death unavoidable? Which I would speak more on it if it wasn't massive spoilers. It actually pisses me off because I looked at a walkthrough to prevent the death and then saw that there was actually no way to prevent it. Hold on. Let me double check before I relay that information into the universe. That was a mistake because people were just talking about the ending being amazing, also bringing up the fact that it is similar to Mass Effect 2's ending. I think that the main point is that because the game follows the themes of loss, the thought that you have to lose someone is kind of false. Also, while we're on the subject of Mass Effect, there are usually 3 endings you can get. Like most games, you have the good ending, the bad ending, and the true ending. I try to usually get the true ending because that is usually the best ending for everyone involved. And then there is Mass Effect 3. I'm not going to speak on that, but if you know, then you know. There was another matter that I kind of wanted to discuss that I read. So, one comment talked about how if you didn't lose someone, the game wouldn't be realistic because of the enemies you are going up against. You fight a ton of enemies throughout the many Dragon Age games that felt a fuck ton harder and worse than the enemies in this game. Now, they do have a status, and you learn a lot more about them and what they are as you progress throughout the game. You realize what they are, and it helps you think about who you have to face. Now, you do have to fight a ton of other enemies that aren't on the same scale of the big baddies. They do, for the most part, prepare you for the fight. I feel like there should be an option, like in Mass Effect 2, not to lose anyone, but I get why they made it so you actually lost someone. The thing is, if you don't prepare for every possible outcome, then lose someone. If you do prepare and do everything possible, then why do I have to see someone go? I will stop feeling emotions for this situation right now. Also, for the people that said it makes it less realistic, I would have to say you are weird. There is nothing more realistic than having to deal with demons, magic, and magic beings causing chaos in the world. I get the fact that the main theme is loss, and we do feel loss at the end, which I will not explain, but don't give it to me again. There was a bigger loss in the game that the theme didn't include, which was loss of freedom. I don't know why I heard a fucking bald eagle play in the background. I was like, ew! That's not a bald eagle. I don't know if that is, but it's not a bald eagle. It's not. That's not the. That's not the. Shut up, Jared. Oh my god. Shut up. I went with Rogue as my first character because my first character in Inquisition was a human rogue. So I decided to make another rogue for my first playthrough, and I was going with a rogue that focused on ranged combat. So I decided to make another rogue for my first playthrough. I was going to go with a rogue that focused on ranged combat. So, all the Dragon Age games, archery was pretty much just a lock-on system. That meant that you just had to lock on and just try not to get hit, and then command your companions with a tactical pause. This game got away from that. Basically made you have to aim, also made you have an arrow amount that you had to pay attention to. Say it with me. Realism. The arrow amount would regen, but you would have to level your skill tree to get the regen rate up, or wear gear that did that. Now, that makes it so you have to weave autos while you are waiting for the arrows to regen. Truthfully, I feel like the game wants you to always be melee. The main reason I think that is because you always have aggro. The enemies will always aim for you until you get your tanks and have them do their war cry to get aggro off of you. But sadly, the game makes you targeted the whole time, which makes the game a whole lot less fun for me. If I was the main target because I use a big skill or an AoE ability, then I understand. There's a reason why in MMOs you aren't supposed to attack until after a tank is aggro. But that isn't really a thing in this game. The previous games could control your other teammates in order for them to do the best actions possible for the battle. It's also helpful if your tank leads the charge and not your very killable mage. Like I said earlier, the best way to get the enemies off of you is to have your tank take aggro from you. Sadly, that doesn't happen for a while because the game doesn't introduce your first tank till a bit into the game. Also, remove the health of your allies, which means that your allies can't die. Well, I guess they can die, which is a callback to our previous topic, but they can die in combat. I have no idea why this was removed from the game, but I like controlling characters, so combat didn't feel so drawn out. I felt like I was playing Dance Dance Revolution the way I was trying to go the right directions or to avoid damage. I wasn't able to maximize my potential as an archer. Made me feel like it was the wrong idea to play an archer. I had assumptions because there was class freedom in the previous games. I hope that would be the same in this game. Now you may ask, how do you make archery fun? And you do it by trying to get headshots while trying not to pull as much aggro. Hope you read the part where I said try not to pull as much aggro. I want the ability to fuck up and pull aggro and then pay for my actions. You just walk into combat and immediately get aggro because you are the only one that can die. That's the main reason you always have aggro in combat. Because I removed the ability for your allies to die or even get mana, so in this game, you don't get a mana bar, but a bar that flows based on you hitting or getting hit by enemies. For rogues, you need to avoid your enemies and attack in order to fill your gauge. Getting hit decreases it. But again, you are the only one that has to worry about this. I believe it's the same for mages. I think for the most part, all the classes work in this sort of fashion. So I'm not going to explain it all. Listen, I am lazy. I don't care enough to go back in and experiment with other classes. But yeah, because they removed the ability to control your companions, you no longer have the opportunity to try out their different abilities. The beauty of having them be playable, that you can play their custom class, and also try out the other classes without having to select it in character creation. Again, you would still play them because you would want to try out the other specializations. In the game, just like the other games, you can choose from 3 specializations for your class. For the most part, they all play differently. But truthfully, you just do it for the abilities. Also, the skill tree, which would be better called a skill web, wasn't my cup of tea. The main reason is because in the previous games, you would know what path you are going because they are labeled in a less roundabout way. Again, everything was labeled when it came to the skill tree, but you would have to level up things you didn't need to get to the one thing you needed. I legit just needed things to level up my bow damage, and arrow regen rate. Anything else I got was not needed. I usually like these type of skill trees in ARPGs. Don't really care for it in a game like this. The main reason is because for ARPGs, you kind of have a class. Your build is basically reflected on the skills you get. But for this game, you kind of select your class and then kind of work around your autos. Also in the older games, you only level up your skill tree to get access to your other skills, and not stat points. Combo was weird for me because I wanted to just play with the bow, and not remotely touch my daggers, so I ignored my upgrades in the skill tree that involved melee combat. I also say daggers, but this game didn't really include daggers at all. The rogue is more of a swashbuckler than a rogue that was shown throughout the games, which is not something I'm saying is a bad thing. I like the diversity of the weapons and the fact that there is a color system that showcases what items should be better. The reason I say that is because most items will have passives that either help or hinder you. To give an example, my red rarity bow limited my arrow count to 1, gave a negative 90% regen rate to arrows, but weak point damage increased. That meant that I could truthfully only use this bow once in combat, then focus on melee until it was ready again. It would be equally useless because if you miss, then you basically wasted your chance to get damage, and now have to wait a long cooldown until you can do range damage again. Because of this, I decided against using that bow. Kind of just sat in my inventory unused until the end of the game. That was until I got to the end of the game. Got an item that made it so that you always had max arrows. The sad thing is that you basically lose the only good part of the bow, which is the weak point damage. Now, for the love of me, I didn't understand what weak point damage meant until I beat the game. The weak point meant headshots like most games, but I was wrong. So when facing bigger enemies, basically boss enemies, there'll be an area that glows. If you hit that area, then you do big damage. But that is if you can even hit that area. I still believe for most enemies, the head would be a weak point, but I didn't really have good memories of using the bow. Because like I said earlier, I was fighting for my life. Now it sounds weird to say that when I was just aiming, but it felt like the game was working against me when I was just trying to make ranged work. I think I said this before, but I was able to play all 3 classes that are available in the game. Now, that doesn't mean that I played every specialization. I don't even think I got to level 20, or whatever level it was to access a specialization. Now, that was another problem I had with the game. Specialization was something you leveled, and had no real involvement. Now the most, that wouldn't make sense. In previous games, you had to do this kind of training, or you needed to reach a prerequisite in order to learn certain specializations. Well, not in Dragon Age 2. You kind of just learned it, and don't really talk about your skill set. I remember learning blood magic and facing blood mages, and nothing was really said about what I was doing. Then again, my Romans didn't hate me in the end, so maybe it did matter. I was jealous because their blood magic was stronger and cooler than what I was using. Back in the Inquisition, you had teachers that came in to teach you your craft. It isn't this intricate mini game, but it's still nice to actually do something and unlock it. Weird thing is that all the specializations are all linked to different factions in the game. So you have a crow specialization, Veilguard specialization, and so on. I guess this is their way of linking all the factions to their classes. I didn't really care for this, because if I didn't go crow or Veilguard, it felt weird to go for the specialization. How would I know how to use it if I wasn't part of a faction? There's a plot hole because of this. But it is a game, so I guess we'll just brush that off for later. Later being never, because I don't plan to talk about this game again. I guess to talk about specialization, since I'm talking about the topic. So the max level is 50, which I only knew since I reached it, and I didn't really make a dent in the skill tree. The main reason for that is because for the most part, you only allowed 1 skill point per level. It meant you weren't going to really stray far from your initial point. You start from the middle, kind of work your way to a specialization of your choice. Well, at least that is what I decided to do. I didn't think there was a better way to traverse through the skill tree. Should have spent more time looking at it, but there was way too much information being shown. Not even the good type of information, but not going into it. I went with the Veilguard specialization, but as a Shadow Dragon. The Veilguard specialization followed the use of ranged attacks. I didn't really care for the ults, but it did follow the Veilguard story and made sense why I was like that. Okay, the ult is basically a technological disc that attacks everyone. Truthfully, it is great because it does great damage and knocks back enemies, but it didn't work with my archer, which is why I didn't like it. It is an RP problem, so you may have liked it. Overall, I disliked the combat because it wasn't as freeing as the other games. Kind of feel like you weren't penalized for trying different things in the other games, but you were in this game. Maybe this is because the game changed from a tactical RPG to an action game, but I have no idea if that is the case. The only thing I can do is assume, because I already know the game will get worked on past this point. Overall, I didn't care for the combat. I played a little bit of mage, but not enough to give any type of information on how it's played. I did play the warrior class for a while, so I can talk about that. So the warrior is probably the most broken thing you can play. The main reason for that is because this game gives you all the aggro from the enemies. That means the best way to progress in combat is to parry and dodge when the right action occurs. I chose a sword and shield warrior, so I learned to parry. Also, all my abilities were able to interrupt red attacks, so I didn't have to ever worry about them. Also, since my mana bar worked with getting hit and attacking, I didn't really ever have to worry about losing it. It just felt like the game was made to be progressed as a warrior, which is weird for a game with multiple classes. Armor. So in this game, you get all these different types of armor. In most RPGs, you would only be allowed to wear certain types of armor. For rogues, you would only be able to wear light armor, because heavier armor messes with your speed. Mages will only have the ability to wear robes, or cloth armor, because they are too weak to wear armor. And warriors, for the most part, will be able to wear all sets of armor. Heavy armor represents a tank. Immediate armor represents more of a DPS. This game was weird because as a rogue, I had access to heavy armor. It still acted the same way heavy armor acted in other RPG games. You would get more armor, but would lose ability power. For a rogue, losing damage, kind of a no-no, since you're all about damage. The problem with this is that nothing is really all that organized. I guess it is organized and separated by armor types, but I would rather a space separating all the different types of armors. Also in the previous games, you had access to a chest that you could drop off gear you didn't plan to use. I don't really remember seeing a way to actually store the gear, because I really doubt they wouldn't include that. Also, I remember in the Inquisition, you were able to have access to other equipment if you stored it in a certain place. That means you could have a pretty good weapon early on in a new playthrough, just all the duds you didn't need. I don't think I paid much attention to the armors, because of the fact that there was always a new piece of armor showing up. You also had appearance chests that allowed you to don the appearance for any piece of armor that you picked up. It was a very nice touch. That meant you didn't have to keep on the worst armor, just because it looked better. I'm not really a fan of fashion souls. Well, this is a souls game because armor doesn't really mean much in that game. Anyway, the armors aren't bad. Just like the weapons that have passives that you consider either good or bad. That means you may not wear armor that has more ability power because that has a really bad passive. Probably have about 2 more bullet points before we end this video. Know that this has been going longer than usual, but what did you expect? I've been playing this game on and off for the past few months. I even took a week off from making content to finish this game. Mind you, I finished it on my Steam Deck. I was home playing on my Steam Deck, which isn't something I ever really do since I am rarely away from my PC when I am home. Now time for the $1,000,000 question. Is this a Dragon Age game? So for the most part, I have to say it is, but it isn't. The main reason it is a Dragon Age game is because it's in the Dragon Age world. That sounds really dumb when I say it out loud. Of course it'll be in the Dragon Age world when it holds the name. Anyway, you're able to see familiar characters that have been seen throughout the game. The sad thing is that this game doesn't follow the previous games, remembering your progress throughout the series. That was a crucial part of the journey, and everything was basically pushed under the rug. Questions I had about the characters, and everything else wouldn't be answered because the game didn't have the previous information. If there's one thing I love about Mass Effect and Dragon Age games, is that they respected your journey. Or your action basically defined what path you took in this new adventure. Sad thing is, this wasn't the case, even though Arrival of the Past companions fell flat. Because besides just showing up, it didn't really affect your journey. Well, except for 1 or 2 people that always helped us along the way. You kind of had to just deal with the characters in front of you, get advice from past companions. Also, most of the games were open world, for the most part. Hell, in Inquisition, you had a mount because of how big the world was. That doesn't mean that the other games were open world, but the last game was. Now that I think about it, I believe every Dragon Age game was different from the last. They all played differently, but for the most part, they still had the same key components. My main issue was the fact that the game took away tactical mode. Well, I guess that isn't true. The tactical mode this time was just used to use your companion's skills so that you can combo them together. I think the biggest differences of this game is its 3-man party, and also the fact you couldn't control the side characters. I believe I said this in past videos, but Dragon Age always held the usual party comp of 4 people. You could choose the party composition as you like, but you always had 4 slots. Unless you were like me in Origins and installed a mod, so the dog didn't take up a party slot. Slowing up the game and seeing 3 people maximum was very weird for me. I don't think I'll ever be used to the 3-person party system. I also didn't care for the ability system. You had 6 abilities to choose from when it came to your companions. Level them up, and decide if you wanted to use their abilities in combat. The sad thing is that you could only choose 3 out of the 6 to use. Also disliked that we could only use 3 abilities as well. We go from our ability bar, where we can shift through different tabs, so that you can mesh different abilities and synergize, to only being able to use 3 abilities in this game. I feel like they needed to streamline the game, and so they removed a lot. In conclusion, since this game wasn't called Dragon Age, I would actually say it was a good game. Well, probably not, because just having the load errors would have made me refund the game. I'm actually surprised I didn't refund it. I think the main reason I didn't is because of these videos. Also because of my ties to the Dragon Age series. If it wasn't because of that, then the game would have been refunded, and I wouldn't really be able to play it again. But if I took out the load errors, also a Dragon Age title, then I have to say the game is actually alright. The reason I say the story is alright is because the story gets cringy at times. Also, it feels like it drags on from times, and rushes through the content. The romance, at least for me, was lackluster. It wasn't as spicy as the other games. Also, probably the wildest thing I'll ever say on this channel. But you show me a thick elf. You don't show me the thickness? Shame on you, and shame on your whole lineage. I'm kidding, but I'm not. Anyway, if this was just an action RPG, then I rate this game a lot better. I actually felt emotions, human emotions at the end of the game, and it wasn't rage. The characters felt real, and even though a lot of the discussions were forced, weren't needed, most of the time they felt good. There was also a ton of content in this game to keep you preoccupied. Sadly, I don't really think there was a ton of replayability, Even though you have to make a big choice early on, the changes are basically just enemy based. The story aspect it does affect will showcase throughout the game, also by the characters affected by it. There's actually a really good touch because you would think it would just show from the enemies and that would be it. I think that if this game had a different name, it would actually have better perception. I mean, if it ran better, I would have loved the game. Well, loved is a strong word. Like I said, the game was alright. I actually didn't hate it, even after all the problems I went through. Then again, if I didn't enjoy the combat and action RPG, then can I actually say I liked the game? Probably not. Listen, if they took out the combat or made it more freeing, then I would say the game was great. Not amazing, but great. The funny thing is, that if I just played Warrior, then I would have said the combat was great. But combat wasn't really fun, because it happened way too much, and the game threw too many enemies at you at once. Also, the fact that aggro wasn't evenly distributed also attributed to the reason the combat wasn't fun for me. So in total, the romance disappointed me, story was alright, and combat was disappointing. I wouldn't recommend this game. But if you don't think of this game as a Dragon Age game, and play it like it is a completely different game, you may like it. Sad thing is I couldn't say this is Dragon Age's Andromeda. The main reason is because this game is connected to the series, not a what-if type of story. Another thing I dislike about this game, many games in the same vein, that you are expected to do everything. Your character for the most part is just someone with above average skills, not the best fighter the world has ever seen. There are definitely people stronger than us, but for some reason, we're expected to fix every problem. If we don't go out and solve an issue, then the city burns, which makes no sense. You have full organizations that have individuals that could dismantle governments if they wanted, but they can't take care of a dragon. In a game called Dragon Age, there aren't groups specialized in fighting dragons at this point. Hunted all the dragons Inquisition for sport. I did the same in this game. The sad thing is that in that game, I knew when I was powerful. In this game, I still felt mortal by how weak I felt. I don't really know if that was a good or bad thing. The main reason I say that is because if this was on purpose, that means that the other people should have protected our city, not have waited for me. So I'm venting, because I chose the Shadow Dragons. Because of my background, I felt like they should have been able to handle themselves, but I was wrong. Why the fuck would you put such a big decision that early on? It doesn't really make me grip my decisions and my choices. Makes me wonder why you decide on your choices. Like most games, I like some things and dislike other things. That will always be the case in games. I'm happy I completed the game because if they do decide to continue the series after this game, it would introduce a lot of interesting concepts later down the line. I'm not going to say what that is because of spoilers. You know what, fuck it. I would talk about one part which I hope they expand on. Skill tree system seems like a good step in the right direction. It'd be great to actually increase your skill through a skill tree. But I wish that there was a way to make it so you didn't have to pick up random skills you didn't need. Also, loving your companions. Having them have their own individual skills felt great. I just wish I was able to use them to get a feel of their abilities. Also, a certain race, access to a different class in the future, and feel less restricted. I would like the return of a 4-person party. I would hate if you still had all the aggro of your enemies. I get that people love the ability to just control their own characters, and not have to worry about deciding on the actions of the NPCs. I actually had a viewer tell me they refunded Baldur's Gate 3 because they had to do turn-based and make decisions for their companions. That person also loved this game, so I'll take their advice on games in the future with a grain of salt. Also, if you play this game in the future, I'd probably recommend it on console or Steam Deck or something similar. I feel like it could be a hit or miss on PC, and for me, it missed when it came to optimization. Closing remarks, not a bad action RPG, but a bad Dragon Age game. The game was abandoned months after the game launched, which didn't bode well for me, who desperately wanted a better running game. The story wasn't predictable, which I don't know if that was because I didn't expect anything from it, because it was a good story. I'll let you guess which one it was, but I truly don't know at this point. I was happy with my ending, but upset with the result of the game's actions. I said the game's actions, not mine, because I played the ending perfectly. When I tell you that I did every single thing I could before beating the game, even though I had no reason to. I did every single optional thing. Kill all the dragons and bosses out in the world before starting the ending. I think it's one of the few games where I could say that I didn't actually need to go back and do anything. I got the message that this was the point of no return. I actually did everything. I didn't 100% the game because I'm not that type of gamer. I actually got 88% of the achievements done in this game, which is wild for my first and only playthrough. I'm going to guess the other things I missed, based on the series choices, also were missing different companions. Also choosing certain choices for the characters, which will require multiple playthroughs, but I'm not doing all that. Also happy to finally get this video out, because I feel like it's been a long time in the making. I feel like I'm finally able to live my life and go outside and touch grass. Create a family in The Sims, because there's no way in hell I'm doing that in real life. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy this weirdly paced video. Probably not as weirdly paced as this game, but I digress. I had fun playing this game at points. In those points, we're getting to know all of these characters. I don't ever want to relive the combat in this game, because I don't like dodging simulator. Also, I feel like they were trying to make Mass Effect, but in the Dragon Age world. I don't even know what game we'll be talking about next video, but it will definitely be not as long. Anyway, my name is Oni the Incubus, that's been my time. Hope you all have a good rest of your day, and an amazing week. Later days. I love you all. Saying kisses consensually. Love you all. Bye. Bye. It's been a long one. Love you all. Peace. Sending love. Peace out. Bye.